Welcome to a special edition of Rainer on Leadership, and I call it special because we have Marc Estes with us. And Marc, first thing I want to do is just say welcome. I've gotten to know you particularly through VisitorReach, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and the exciting things that are going on and in the future, not only the present, but the future of VisitorReach. But I also want to welcome you as a we're very grateful for the work you do as a pastor. So tell us about your pastoral work, and then we will get into more of the VisitorReach, and we'll get into more of this Gamechanger called VisitorReach. Tell us
Yeah.
about your pastoral
First,
work.
first and foremost, thanks again for allowing me to be a part of the Church Answers family and to just be able to share some good thoughts with your audience and with your family. Really, really appreciate that. But
Absolutely.
I've been pastoring now for about 35 years, came out of the business world and jumped into a ministry for a couple of years. I had the wonderful privilege of traveling the world, equipping churches in evangelism with a ministry called Christian Equippers International. It was a joy of my life, seeing all different kinds of churches all over the world. And eventually landed in Portland, Oregon, a beautiful church known Bible Temple, then City Bible Church, and now Manna House. And I've been at the senior pastor helm for about the last 10 years. I've had about 28 years up here, and really have had an incredible opportunity to just steward a legacy church with colleges and schools and church planting movements. And it's just been a true joy to be a part of this work.
Well, I wanted to hear that because we've talked a lot about VisitorReach, which is going to be our focus, but you've been a pastor who's blessed a lot of people and done some great leadership. So thank you for doing that. And we'll get to more later. Hey, before we move on, I want to talk about Upward Sports, our wonderful sponsor. You're talking about the best sports ministry. You're talking about the most incredible sports ministry. You're talking about the largest Christian sports ministry in the world. And we're going to be talking about reaching people with the gospel from a digital perspective, and others, of course, with Marc. But we also want to talk about Upward because their ministries are truly gospel centric. You have the opportunity to get into the community. Imagine you having a sports team. Imagine the sports league coming to you. Do you have a gym? Oh, I don't. That's fine. Do you have a parking lot? Maybe it's not good enough. That's fine. Do you have a field that you can use? Yeah. Upward Sports will bring it to you, and they are the best in the business. Now, here's the thing for you. We're about to shut this down, so you folks get ready for it. They're going to give you a $500 grant to get you started.
Wow.
Get that grant now because it's about to go away. And just a reminder, you need to be planning for 2025, and you need to be planning for the fall that is coming up. So get ready. Contact Upward Sports. You can see their link in the show notes, upward.org/church answers, or give them a call and tell them Church Answers sent you. So, Sam, I know that I have opened up this conversation. I know you've gotten to know Marc Estes well, and our time with VisitorReach, and we're going to form this entire session around reaching people. But I really want to talk about VisitorReach. So I'm going to turn it over to you for just a moment, and then we'll come back and do some very specific things. All yours.
Yeah, one of the things that I loved about doing some projects with VisitorReach and Marc specifically is just how they are using technology and how this whole world is beginning to open up, this whole digital world. I remember being on the internet in the mid 90s, and I remember the first time I saw video on the internet, and it's pretty wild what we can do. And now the outreach opportunities are absolutely phenomenal. Marc, I want to talk a little bit about receptivity, particularly to the digital world. And what have you seen? Because you've done a lot of research, you've done a lot of work with the digital realm. What are you seeing in terms of receptivity for people outside the church wanting to come into the church through digital means?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've used the term loosely to talk about this generation, and I'm not talking specifically about just a particular age group, but just this particular season. Um, I've been using this term Zoomers, and I love the term because it really has identified what has happened since the pandemic. What we really have seen is the pandemic forced the entire world into isolated places, that the only place that they could really connect with relatives, friends, neighbors, coworkers was a digital space. And one of those spaces obviously was Zoom. And so I loosely coined the phrase Zoomers just to identify that there's been this colossal shift from where people hang out. And, current statistics are showing us this phenomenon when it comes to technology. And that is that the average person spending about 7.5 hours a day in front of some kind of screen. And I think that's absolutely insane when you really think about it. And that means that the majority of the population right now that are saying that they're more open to spiritual things, Barna said 74% of people are more open to spiritual things. We also find that that same group of people are more reluctant than ever to walk through the door, that they're hanging out in these digital spaces. And I think it's important for the church to understand, I'm going to call it the new Roman road. It's really where people are congregating. And one of the challenges that we're facing today is that as the church came out of the pandemic, they've gone back to their old means and ways of trying to reach people, right? And so we continue to preach this idea of a gospel of come versus a gospel of go. We think that people are just going to migrate through the doors of our church if we just put out a flyer or a good event, what have you. But what we're finding is people are in these isolated digital spaces, more reluctant than ever to walk through the door. And even for those that are spending time talking about this idea about digital platforms as an evangelism tool, it's really kind of an add-on thought. And we look at churches today, many don't have websites or effective ones. Others don't have any digital platforms on the big five, when I think about that, in Instagram and X and TikTok and YouTube, and much as less there's 72 different digital platforms. And this is where people are congregating. And it's so important for us to understand that like Jesus told the story about the Good Samaritan, when he saw the man in the ditch, it says he went to where he was. This is where people are hanging out. And the church has to make this significant shift to focus on, how do I get into the digital arena and meet people where they're at when they want to talk about their needs, not just about our cute church programs. So that's kind of a snapshot of where I'm really looking at this digital space and why it's so critical for us to pay attention to what's happening in society.
Mark, we have just completed the survey portion of a new research project. It'll be our inaugural Church Answers research project. And I'm going to let Sam describe what we did. I'm going to let him talk about B. I'm going to talk about Z and some of the things we found out. But one of the things we found out here, as we looked at, and he'll talk about the two groups in just a moment, was that the church is more reluctant to go to these unchurched people in the digital world than the unchurched people are receptive to spiritual things or the church itself. So we've got this tension where those people out in the world are looking for help, and we got the church that doesn't know to go, and they're just waiting on people to come. But Sam, explain the two groups that we studied.
Yeah, we haven't released, at least at the time of the recording, we haven't released the research yet. But it is complete, and we're working through all the data. What we did was we put people into two buckets: those who go to church and those who don't go to church. And we asked them the same questions about the church, and then we can compare them. And what we found was those that go to church tend to view the church as less relevant to the world than those who don't go to church. So the outsiders were looking at the church saying, we need you. You're still relevant to this world. You're still doing good. And those who are inside the church are thinking, the outside world doesn't care. The outside world isn't receptive. The outside world doesn't want us anymore. And so there's this huge disconnect of perceptions. Now, those who don't go to church, do they believe the same as those who are inside the church? Probably not. But the question was all about, is the church relevant? And outsiders tend to view the church as more relevant than insiders, and it was a fascinating revelation in this study. So when you are talking about digital means of outreach, or really any kind of outreach, uh, what would you say to this issue of reluctancy? What are you seeing in your world? I know you guys are doing a lot of research too at VisitorReach.
Yeah. It's a great point. What we are finding is that people are more spiritually open than ever.
Hmm.
They have a desire and they do see the church as more relevant. The problem is the reluctancy comes from what they have actually experienced over the last couple of years, the trauma and the wave of stuff that's come their way. And we look at cancel culture, and we look at what happened with all of the racial tensions, and what's happened with the political wars, and people just, they want to get away from the noise. And what's happened, there's been this significant shift, and that is prior to the pandemic, people would actually need about 3 to 5 touch points from a congregation or an individual before they would walk through the door of a church. And what is shifted in just the last 4 years is that number has increased to about 12 to 15 touch points. And what we're finding is that most churches are failing miserably in having a strategy for that many touch points. And here's the key is people want to be met at their point of need, not necessarily on our perception. In other words, the way that we're trying to bring them in, that's where we're missing the relevancy thing. People want us to know that they're hurting, that they're broken, that they're hopeless. And so what we're trying to do at Visitor Reach is to meet people where they're at based on their need and start this personal one-on-one conversation with an individual, with them being in their safe space, which is maybe in their living room or bedroom or somewhere on their phone texting. That's the place where they're willing to open up. And so there's this chasm that's been taking place. We've got people that are more inspired about spiritual things. They think the church might have the answer. They just don't feel safe enough or motivated enough. And so it creates this reluctancy to be able to consider crossing this great chasm to walk into the door of a church.
Mark, one of my favorite passages in one of my 66 favorite books of the Bible, which is Luke. I go to Luke. I like Luke because he did Acts and he did Luke. So he did the gospel, and then he did the first about the early church. And Jesus saying this in Luke 10, these are his words to his followers. He says, the harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who's in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into the fields. Now go. Okay, I'm going to tie this right into what you're doing, Mark, because this is just dead on. First of all, the command wanting pray for that there will be people out there that we can reach, that there might be someone that'll listen to our message. No, he said the harvest is great. What's the need? The need is for workers to go into the harvest field. And what VisitorReach is doing is discovering how we can get the workers into the field. The problem is many churches don't have the workers because they're not unwilling to go, and we don't know where the harvest field is. And so we're just hearing right now that a large portion of the harvest field is in a digital space. Tell us, just give us some. Okay, I'm an old. I call myself an old fella, so I'm an old fella, and I need a simple understanding of how VisitorReach gets the church into the harvest field. I know that you said that they're going to be on their smartphones and they're going to be doing some things, but how do you connect to them? What's going on there? I'm too dense to figure this out, but my guess is you can explain it.
Yeah, we have been able to use modern day technology to be able to identify people in a community that are either looking for a church, that are new to an area, or on a spiritual journey. And we know what they're searching for. We know whether they're searching for some kind of issue regarding depression, hopelessness, addictions. And, meeting people at their point of need when they're desperate is critical. And so we want to be able to identify who those people are. And we've been able to use technology that gets us in front of them when they're searching for answers. And this is so critical. And what we use, our philosophy, we call it nurture points. And it's we want to get and nurture that person and build a relationship and start at their point of need based on their name to move them forward. And so our technology allows us to do that, where a church can, instead of waiting for a Sunday morning in 1 hour for people with needs to come flocking through the door of their church, we can find those people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all four corners of the community, and we can connect them or with them when they're wanting to talk and think about it. And what that starts is a conversation. The beauty of it is that as they respond to a need or an ad that we create, it drops right into an app for them, and we immediately text back. So all that they get is a text in their inbox that says, "Hi, this is Mark. Nice to meet you. How can I pray for you?" And so because we know their name, I know their name, we start at this one-on-one relationship name, and we begin this journey of just walking through their particular challenges, one conversation, one day at a time. Sometimes that can take weeks, sometimes that can take months, but our job is just to let them know that they matter to us, they matter to God, and we want them to come along the journey as God directs them
All
along the
right.
way.
So I'm one of those hurting out there, and I'm going to do something that's going to allow you to connect with me. What is that something that I am doing? What am I? Give me one example of this hurting person maybe seeking prayer. Where am I seeking prayer? And how do you find me? Give me some of those details.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a few stories. One story would be a lady that's sitting in an abortion clinic. She's sitting there waiting. She's next in line to go have an abortion. She opens up her phone like everyone else does and to pass time and starts scrolling through her social feed. Sees something on Instagram that says, "Are you feeling lonely? Would you like to find a place to call home?" She says, "Wow, that really, spoke to her." She immediately puts her name, her phone number, her email, drops it into this app, and what happens is she immediately then connected with a local church that knows that this lady was sitting there going through this challenge.
Hmm.
What happens immediately is that we then know that it comes into our app. She gets a text that drops into her inbox, just like a friend's texting her. It's the universal common language that everybody knows how to do. And then the conversation begins.
Hmm.
The pastor then encourages her, tells her that she's loved and cared for. She gets up, she walks out of the abortion clinic, does not have an abortion. 2 days later, walks into church on a Sunday morning, gives her life to Christ. A few weeks ago, she was just water baptized.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how it works. It's that we are putting information in front of people that are at a point of need. They simply respond, and when they do, they give us their name, their phone number, and their email, and it begins an immediate dialogue, a meaningful conversation that could go on, like I said, for perhaps weeks or months at a time.
That is absolutely amazing. Sam, I got another question, but I'm dominating, and I don't usually dominate these. I usually let you do most of the talking. So I'm going to defer to you, but I got one more before we leave with Mark, because I love this idea of getting into the harvest field, because that's what's happening right now. They're getting into that harvest field.
Yeah, one of the images that I get into my brain when I think of visitor reach is, everyone's on a road, everyone's on a journey, everyone's traveling somewhere, and there are bumps in the road, there's ups and downs, and there are plenty of times when people will be needing help, seeking help, desiring help, and they're doing searches online, they're scrolling, it's googling, it's all these things. And what you're doing, in essence, is you're putting up billboards along the road, this digital road, that say, hey, you can find help here. And people see it. And in their case, they click on it. And instead of it being an ad or some sort of link to a product, it's a church. And now they have a connection locally, to people who can really help them. So, I hate to, reduce your product to a billboard because it's so much more than that. But you're putting up signs along the way for people to see, and they are the ones that seek help. You're not being intrusive. You're not forcing your way into someone's house. You're simply putting up the signs along the way to say, if you need help, this is where you can find it. And now people have a connection not only to a church, but a local church.
Absolutely.
And you can be that presence in your community for hurting people. How? Well, it gets done through VisitorReach. And goodness, we could do a whole episode on all the complexities of your technology, but frankly, most people aren't really interested in how everything works under the hood. Just know that this is some amazing new technology that enables you to do that. And that's one of the things that I love about VisitorReach is churches have always used technology. When the printing press came out, guess what? That was used. When direct mail came out, that was used. You've all gotten postcards in our inbox, right? Sometimes we pay attention to them, sometimes we don't. What you're doing is you're doing all that digitally, and there are plenty of people who are paying attention, plenty of hurting people who need help. Now your church is connected to them, and the mechanism that does that is VisitorReach.
Mark, Sam and I have probably whet the appetite for a few people to find out more about VisitorReach. A 20 to 25-minute podcast does not do it justice. Of course, they can go to visitorreach.com and they can see a lot there. Any particular thing you want to tell us if someone says, I really like what I'm hearing here, or for you who are on YouTube, thanks for watching. Hey, subscribe, give us a thumbs up there. What's the best way for them to, if you want to show them, go through the whole process of VisitorReach, what's the best way to get in touch?
That's a great question. I, like most of you listening today, have been a pastor that went through some of the toughest years of the church's history over these last 4 or 5 years. And so I think today many pastors are overwhelmed just trying to put the Lego pieces back together of their own church, much as less trying to figure out about the complexities of the digital space. And so we really feel like what the Lord's asked us to do is to take the complexity out and to put together a complete full service process for the local church so that they can continue to pastor, reach people. We're just going to make that front door more efficient. So basically, the simplest way to do is just get online, visitorreach.com. And right there on the front page, when you go there, you're going to find where you can sign up for a short demo. It's free, non-obligatory. And what will happen is you will immediately be in contact with one of our people, and then we'll start a journey. If that's something that actually is appealing enough for you, you are then onboarded, and we have an expert team that comes alongside and works with you to set everything up. We've got ad campaign teams and marketing teams. We have our digital process teams. We've got our client success specialists. We want to make it easy for you. So we take all the complexity out. We help go through all of the 72 different digital platforms. We're just coming out right now with a digital health assessment tool, probably $100 value for a church. We do that free for a church, and we'll put them through that process and scrub all the digital platforms, voice recognition technologies, maps, and we call it omni-channel marketing. So we want to make sure that you're just not visible, but you're suggestible. And what we do is then we simply work with you, put together some ad campaigns. We flip on the switch. You have the app that's downloaded. You have a person picked out, and then you just start pastoring people as they start coming your way. It's really that simple. VisitorReach.com.
And tell them that the Rainers sent you. Rainer on Leadership or Church Answers, either one.
Absolutely.
Mark, it's been a joy to have you here, my friend. Every time I'm with you, I feel it's cliche, but I feel the souls are knitted even more so every time we get together. So thank you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you guys. Love you. Thank you again for all that you're doing just to equip and build churches.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, special thanks to Marc Estes, the co-founder of VisitorReach, for being on today's episode. We also want to thank our sponsor, California Baptist University. They have an incredible bachelor's degree program if you have someone in your life that is interested in getting a bachelor's degree, you should check out California Baptist University. That could be somebody who's getting close to graduating high school or graduating high school. It could be a pastor who doesn't have a bachelor's degree. They have a full breadth of courses. They have an incredible online degree program. So whether you're looking to start or finish your degree program, California Baptist University is definitely the one that you should check out. And it's not just online. They have an incredible campus there in Riverside, California. Beautiful, beautiful place. Dad and you and I have visited there, and we were so impressed with the campus.
Absolutely.
It's a great, great experience. So check out the link in the show notes, or you can just go to calbaptist.edu to learn more. Thank you, California Baptist University, for sponsoring today's episode. And thank you again to Marc Estes of VisitorReach, just talking about everything that's happening in the world of digital outreach. They do it better than anybody else. So again, go to visitorreach.com, check them out, and you can check us out on next week's episode.